All right, but isn't that cool? I'm not going to use that intro too much, but that's my new intro. And as you can see, as I got my overkill shirt on. So I have all three guys here. We are definitely going to be talking about blue cats, snakeheads, and I think we might try to throw in a little bit of rockfish. And I think they were talking Hayden. So there's going to be any questions. Anybody that has any questions, please. I'm going to be doing this myself because my wife is in the other room tending to something. And so real quick, I'm just going to talk for just a minute while these guys sit back there. First of all, the reason this stream came up was because a couple of weeks ago, I had Stephen and David Confair come up, and we were talking blue cats and snakeheads, and and getting into it, not too much of the fishing part. And as we were doing it, we were seeing comments coming in from Noah, and Noah Breesman. Just shake your head, yeah, Breesman. It's Breesman. He was giving some good statistics, good information, what we were asking, and why I didn't bring him up. I didn't know if he was ready, but I should have actually brought him up on the last live stream. So I reached out to him and asked him, would he be interested to come up and do another thing on whatever he wanted to do, because he is a fishery biologist, I think out of Salisbury, and he was very intimate because he wanted to bring his student up, Zach Crum. He's actually, I was talking to him earlier, he was on the water. He was actually in fish, cutting them open, doing all, so he's out on the water doing all the research, okay? So them guys are in the back. What I want to bring up real quick is that me and the wife, this winter time, I guess after doing about 3 years of YouTube, I guess sometimes you wonder why maybe you're not a little bit more than, if I don't get to your comments, hi Craig, see that up there, and I see y'all. So I'm going to try to multitask as I talk doing this, okay? Actually, you know what? Let me bring these guys up, and they can just listen to me ramble because I'm good at that. Hold up. Sorry, let's bring him up. There's Noah Breesman. He's the biologist. There's Zach. That is his student, Zach Crum. And here is Snakehead Jesus. That is Stephen Camboris. Okay. So as a YouTuber, anybody here that comes on that's a YouTuber, I guess you get to the point where you maybe think you're maybe stuck, that it's not going to, go far. So I did have somebody from the outside kind of come in and, how you doing, Sabrina? Come in and kind of give an outside look. And some of the things, were kind of normal, what you might think. But one of the main things that he brought up to me is, who's your target audience? You got to, who am I targeting? Who am I talking to? And when you actually figure that out, you got to do that. So when I put up my fishing videos, I mean, how many catch and cooks are uploaded on a weekly, daily basis? So how can I stand out? Oh, God, I did that last time. So how can I stand out? And in 2021, the beginning of it, I started another YouTube channel. And that is because one of the other big passions that I have, and I got away from, and that is my music. And my music, 21090, that's got to be Todd. What's up, Todd? Rashawn, hey for Rashawn, what's going on? So what I'm going to be doing is I'm still going to be doing my crabbing, because that's my biggest thing that I do is my crabbing videos. I'm going out with Rachel's getting ready, a commercial crabber. She's a woman. She does a lot of commercial crabbing. She's actually oystering right now. You know how hard that job is? That's some tough work. So she's getting her boat set up for next year to actually oyster herself. That's pretty tough. So she gave me some video recently of her, and in an area you have like 15 boats literally around each other, missing each other as these guys are oystering. It's a pretty cool video. I got that coming up as she gets prepared for crabbing season. So what I've decided is I'm going to go after a niche, and a niche for me is that I'm actually going to introduce my music, bands from around the world. I've talked to people from Greece, Italy, Germany, Iraq. I was talking to a guy from Kareem from Iraq, Mexico, bands. Hey, Nancy, that's my aunt. That's my aunt, love of my life. She took care of me when she was a teenager. She was one that a teenager having to run around a 5-year-old all the time. That really had to suck, but she did it. So I'm going to intertwine these two together. And one of my main goals in the end is actually bring these musicians with me and take them out fishing, especially the local guys. And I think I have one now set up. He was probably one of the most popular musicians in the Baltimore area in the 80s, 90s, 2012. They were on MTV, 2012. They had he had a pretty big this musician. He's a drummer. He actually did all the music. He is actually going to come out crabbing with me. So far as what we agreed to, which would be cool. So we're going to talk music on my channel. We're going to show you music from around the world. And we're still going to be doing fishing and all that stuff. All right. So that's kind of my update on my channel. That's what I wanted to add. A lot of people are not going to enjoy the metal music because, I mean, I like everything from Daryl Hall to Slayer, stuff like that. So, but we're metalheads. We're old school metalheads, but we like good music, whether it be rock or whatever. And so what we are going to do is I want each one of these guys kind of explain what they do. And we'll start with Noah because Noah is the reason why I started this stream in the first place.
Howdy, everyone. So I'm Dr. Noah Bressman. You can just call me Noah. I'm a fish biology professor at Salisbury University. Most of my research, I do a wide range of fish research, from fish that crawl around on land like snakeheads. So you may have heard that from a few years ago. There was a lot of buzz about that, and that was some of my research. Everything to hagfish slime and how I did some research on how it could be used. This hagfish produced tons and tons of slime, and I did some research for the Navy to see how that could be used as a non-lethal weapon to stop boat propellers. But I'm doing a little different things now that I'm in here at Salisbury University. Still doing some of the amphibious fish stuff, seeing why fish come onto land, how they move around on land, and where they go onto land. But also doing some stuff like fishing-related projects. And then when Zach was a prospective master's student and proposed this project to me that we're currently working on to work on blue catfish and snakehead diet, I'm like, I was like, you mean we have to go a lot of fishing for this research? I'm in. Let's do it. And I'll let Zach explain that a little bit more.
All right, Zach.
Yeah. So, hey everyone. My name's Zach Crum. I'm from the Chesapeake Bay area originally. Grew up in Virginia. Did a lot of fishing growing up, which kind of led me down this career in fish biology. So I went up, kind of did my undergraduate degree at Virginia Tech in fisheries science. Got really into the whole science aspect behind fish. So that led me to kind of work around the country for a few years and circle back here and met up with Noah. And him and I are working on a project here on the eastern shore of Maryland, and we're looking at blue catfish and snakehead diets in the Nanticoke River watershed. So Marshy Hood Creek, Broad Creek, and then the Nanticoke all the way up Maryland to Delaware. So we're about, I don't know, 6 or 7 months into our project here and learning a lot, and really excited to talk to you guys about all the catfish and snakehead stuff we got going on.
It's awesome. My man. Come on, Jesus. Tell me.
So I think a lot of y'all probably already know me. So Steve Camboris, otherwise known as Cambo Trout. My backstory, born and raised Baltimore, Maryland. Joined the Army at 17. Bounced around the world for about 12 years. Eventually made it back to Maryland in 2016. Caught my first snakehead in 2017, and I've been addicted since. But with all that being said, I just want to say that I'm really excited to hear from Noah and Zach tonight about the research, because my job that I do right now is at the American Fisheries Society. And one thing I get to do is that I get to kind of keep up to date on a lot of the published science. I won't say all of it, but AFS is a publisher of fishery science. So my friend, the editor, Peter Tursick, whenever anything comes across his desk that he thinks that I might be interested in, he gives me the heads up. And I love reading that. I love interacting with fisheries biologists. I was a hair's breadth away. Like, I went to high school for environmental tech. I was that close to going that route. And any chance I get to read the science, or especially talk to the scientists, I really appreciate what y'all do. And I'm really psyched to hear what you got to tell us tonight.
Well, that's a lot of reading that I don't do much of. So that's why I got you guys here. It was actually exciting to me because, there's such a debate over snakeheads. And then whenever, like my friend, when you bring up blue cat, he goes, well, everybody talks snakeheads. That's all they do is bring up blue cats. But I think when you got a fish that can get up to 90, 70, 80 pounds, and they pretty much will eat almost anything that's, I would think, in their path, if they're hungry. I think that's a big deal. And they're in the same waters as snakehead. They're in the same water as largemouth. They're in the same water as perch. Everything in there, them blue cats are right there with them. So it isn't like they're in some deep hole all year long. I mean, these catfish are everywhere. That's my point. So so when you go out, I'm just going to say this one question. If anybody's got any question, please bring them up. I think I've got everybody that comes up here. I think all of them will come up here. So Zach, you need to explain then that you guys you're actually out on a boat. I mean, you were actually gutting some fish up when I talked to you earlier.
Yeah, I had about, all the way up to my elbows in fish guts and stomach content. So it was a lot of fun. But yeah, we're out quite a bit. And what we do is we partner with, here at Salisbury University, we partner with some members from Maryland DNR as well as Delaware. And we go out and we do what's called electro fishing. So you guys are probably familiar. I mean, I don't know if everybody that's on here is familiar. But
explain,
okay. So basically, to overly simplify it, basically you have a generator that connects to a couple of probes that kind of hang off the front of the boat. And that provides an electrical current into the water, which temporarily stuns the fish, allowing us, the Maryland DNR folks to be able to scoop up the fish. And then when we're looking for catfish, we actually have a separate boat we kind of use as a chase boat to be able to scoop up fish that come off,
it's like
further than the yeah, exactly. It's like a taser for the water. So,
and I'm trying to hit you up. I'm trying to hit you up. I want to go. Yeah,
it'd be cool to have it kind of documented. I've been trying to get some video and stuff, but a lot of stuff going on when you're out there in the water. So
that's fine. I know Steven wouldn't mind doing that either.
Yeah, it's I went out with. Do you gentlemen know Aaron Bunch down with Virginia Department of Game Inland Fisheries?
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I went out with him electro fishing on the Rappahannock for blue cats. The biomass down there was insane, just insane.
It's incredible.
Yeah,
there's more. We see more fish that float up than you could possibly even net. So, it is really astonishing the biomass of blue cats that you'll see on some of these tidal rivers.
Well, it always occurred to me. It was always a question I want to ask you guys. How come if these fish are so bad for, especially blue cats, if they are so bad, so how deep is the current of water you going? How about you go ahead and answer that?
Yeah, so that really depends on the species you're targeting. So what's interesting is that different species respond differently to electrical current. So with blue catfish, we use a very low frequency. And it seems with that low frequency, we can get fish coming up, up to 100, 150 yards off the boat, maybe more at times. And so it's really getting down. I would say up to probably 20 feet when conditions are optimal. And things like water temperature kind of influence how well the electricity works. But yeah, hopefully that answers your question.
That's cool. I actually forgot. I'm old. I forgot what I was even saying. But I'm going to play this quick video. This is me actually into the snakehead.
Oh, that's weird. What is that?
See what it is. Hold on. Looks like a crawfish. So right here,
oh my God.
So that right there is a crawfish. And I was actually throwing this color today with a little bit of red and brown crawfish crankbait today. I was actually throwing that. So there's a crawfish. So, but I don't know. They're going to, I would think if you go to get a bass belly, you're going to find a crawfish, and anybody here wants to talk quick fishing. Look, man, my buddy was fishing this weekend and he caught about 15 pounds and lost about 4 bass, but he probably he caught like 5 snakehead, and that's just flipping a jig, crawfish.
Yeah, there was some work done on the western shore by Dr. Joe Love of the Maryland Department of Natural Resources and some other people. And the they did some diet studies over there. There haven't been any diet studies over here, which is what we're doing. But over there, they found that the things that made up like most of the diet of snakeheads there was like crawfish, mummy chugs, and like bluegills, and some frogs too. And that was kind of the bulk of the diet. And so they're definitely very active predators. They don't really scavenge as much as like the catfish do, but the catfish are also pretty active too. Like I'm sure you'll. Zach, have you found any crawfish yet? We found definitely crabs, but I don't know about crawfish yet.
Yeah, I actually looked at one today.
Oh, there we go.
So I believe it was a spiny cheek crawfish. So yeah, I mean that's the first one I've seen, but I think it's something that we'll see more and more as we get into the spring and summer season.
It's seasonal.
And Sam, if you don't mind me asking a question real quick.
No, you cannot do that. I didn't bring you. No, you're just here to sit and listen.
I gotta be polite. I'm not on my podcast.
No, absolutely, man. That's why I brought you here, because trust me, that's one of the main reasons I brought you here.
All right, good deal.
At least asked you to come.
How long have y'all been doing these stomach content surveys over on the Nanticoke? Like, how much data do you have so far?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we're pretty preliminary. I mean, we have been working since I believe October. Yeah, okay. Of last year. So yeah, I kind of looked at. We got a look at fall diets, and then got some fish over the winter. They're harder to sample in the winter just because electro fishing doesn't work. So you kind of have to resort to other methods. And then we're really getting into our spring season here. We got a great start the last couple weeks, a few weeks or so.
And what survey period or survey length are you looking at? Like, how long do you plan on continuing the research?
Yeah, so I mean, I think that's kind of going to depend on my trajectory through the master's program here at Salisbury.
I got you.
But I think it needs to be through next December. So the idea is to have diets represented from each season.
Exactly.
So
good deal.
Within 1 year. If I extend my time here, it could go up to another year beyond that. So
what's up, Norline? Go ahead.
I'm gonna hope. I want all the best for you with career progression, but the more data, the better, man. So again, thanks for what y'all are doing out there, especially through all the seasons. I know some seasons are a lot more comfortable than others to be out there.
Oh yeah.
This weekend, so as you talk this, I want to, this is how pretty it was Sunday morning.
Mm-hmm.
That was very beautiful. And that was me winning this weekend with bass tournament. And I think I got a video. I think I had a snake laugh at me after he got off. So it was funny how after I hooked it, I missed it because I was ticked off. And as I was walking back to turn the camera off, all of a sudden a big long stream popped out of the water. I got that on camera. So obviously I believe that's a snakehead.
To answer the question here, we're looking at both the Delaware and Maryland. We're looking at the whole Nanticoke River because we don't know, like maybe their diet's a little different further down, saltier area, further up in the smaller creeks. We're just trying to figure out how they're eating in the whole river system.
And before we go, just make sure I don't forget. Make sure you do a podcast, don't you? Zach? You do a podcast, right?
Yeah. So I'm part of a team of co-hosts on the Fisheries podcast, and it may be a little bit more technical into the realm of fisheries science, but it does have some really good accessible information on there. And we bring in a lot of guests from all over the country and all over the world too that talk about different stuff going on within fisheries science and how people get into careers in this field. So if anybody's interested, that's a really good place to check out some of that.
So you send me that link and I'll put it underneath in the description here. But if I'll try to do my best to get that information out. Can you say what it is? I mean, what's the link to it, or is there like just?
Yeah, so we're up on most major streaming services. Like I know I have Spotify, but we're up on Apple Podcasts, I think Amazon, and we also have our own website here that I can put in the comments in just a second.
There you go.
If I can figure it out.
Did watch. Okay, so real quick, I do have a little giveaway, and it's just something that I came up with. So what we're going to give you here today is that we got some JO number 1. I'm not going to give everybody JO number 2. The only reason why was because this is good. This is a good thing for anything, whether you do shrimp, whether you do your crab soups, your fish. I mean, this is a good seasoning. It's an all-around purpose seasoning. I love my JO stuff. And we're going to give you, it's a Southern style fish fries, for your snakehead tacos. And we'll be giving that away. And what I'll do, I think I got it hooked up. Give me this real quick. Get it, just to make sure I got this. So what you'll do is when I tell you to do it, we're going to do a lot easier this time. So StreamYard actually has a thing. Last time it was a freaking mess. But you're going to put in hashtag fishing, and then StreamYard will calculate it. And that was because of Grippin' and Rippin'. He's on here right now. That is Grippin' and Rippin' YouTube channel. He's here. And I got that from him, and I worked that out. And that's pretty awesome. Here's my old lady doing that. All right. So so what do you think the growth so far, whatever for the question that I have, when it comes to blue cats, what do you think like the growth rate of a blue cat is?
Yeah. So in terms of how quickly do they reach a certain size is kind of what you're.
Yeah. I mean, like we'll just say in a year's period, how big would you think the catfish, would get?
Yeah, I mean, so a growth rate is kind of on a spectrum, right? With fish generally growing quicker at younger ages, and then that kind of growth levels off as they grow to larger sizes. But something that we're seeing, so it kind of relates to like maturity, right? So I think for your average blue cat to get up to maturity takes somewhere between 4 and 7 years, and so somewhere right in between there, and so in that time, so it gets to is probably a length of about, I would say about 18 to 24 inches. So 4 years or so, maybe 5 or 6 years, you're getting within that 18 to 24 inch range. If that's kind of a good way to get at it. And at that point, you're also sexually mature. They can start reproducing, making babies, and live for another, probably, I mean, they can live up to 25 years.
Yeah, catfish, dude.
Yeah, and because fish are cold-blooded, temperature can have a big impact on their growth rate. So a warmer year, they'll grow more quickly, and also further south, like in their range, like you can find these guys down in Mississippi, they're going to grow more quickly there and reach a larger size more quickly there than up here. It's about as north as they currently are.
I guess that would be the same with like largemouth, because if you go to Florida,
any fish, yeah,
you go to Florida, you come here, it's like, but let me tell you, wintertime, you could catch probably your biggest bass of your lifetime.
Yeah, I mean, just because it's winter doesn't mean the small bass the large bass disappear. They're still there. They're just growing more slowly. The only really fish that are warm-blooded are like tuna and swordfish, and a weird fish called an opa, and that's a weird.
Opa, that's that big round thing, isn't it? That big round.
They have this regional, what's known as regional endothermy, so regional warm-bloodedness, where they heat their eyes up so that like when they're in really cold water, they can still see really well. And that's some really weird things like that. But most fish are cold-blooded. And so in parts of the range, most fish are going to be growing faster in the warmer, more southern regions up to a certain point. If it's at their temperature limit and they get too hot for them, like let's say you have someone like a muskie or northern pike that likes cooler water, and you have them, let's say, down in Florida, that's when they're going to start growing worse and may not survive, and because they're overstressed.
There's lots of individual characteristics too that can affect growth. So certain individuals, just aren't as competitive for food, so they might not grow as quickly as another individual. So that's why, like, we're also kind of looking at growth. So we got to look at a bunch of different individuals and kind of randomly select those to give us an idea of growth rate.
Yeah. Interesting thing with the individuals is too, it's just there's like kind of a spectrum of like how bold a fish is versus how shy a fish is, and the bolder the fish are the ones that are more likely to eat things more voraciously and eat more things more quickly and grow more quickly, but they're also putting themselves out more, so they're more likely to be eaten by predators. And so it all depends on, like, if you're in a body of water with a lot of predators and you're a lot more bold, then you may be more likely to get eaten, or you can also grow more quickly to get too large to be eaten. But if you're shy, you may be more sneaky and less likely to be eaten. It's an interesting balancing act.
So that's pretty interesting stuff. I don't know about you.
I love talking about this stuff.
Dude, look, you got two series. You got a series on blue cat. You got a series on snakeheads. So, I mean, obviously, man, and plus, this is the kind of stuff you do. And, that's, so to talk to them was, which I didn't know them, or I really would have brought them on the stream the first time, but this is awesome. I think it's a lot of information. And so for like largemouth, you got your certain fish, that spawn once a year pretty much, and everybody sets their time for the largemouth. You get that 65-degree water temp. We're probably around May, probably getting the spawning bass. And then I hear snakeheads, they can spawn anywhere from 3 to 5 times a year. Now, is it something like with a trout? The way I look at it, like a trout, where they'll actually keep their eggs, so they'll actually spawn now and still have a bunch of eggs in them, and then wait a little later, spawn again? Or is it that they're actually meeting and completely growing eggs each different time that they go? Do you know that?
So trout, so each fish has different strategies. And right now, snakeheads, it's the science fully isn't out there. Some parts of the region, it seems like they're spawning once. Some parts, it seems just like they're spawning twice. And so there's still some work to figure out exactly how many times a year are snakeheads reproducing. But because snakeheads are one of the most tolerant and variable fish, because they can survive so many conditions. Like they can live under the ice and they can live in 100-degree water, no problem. They can breathe air, they can come onto land, live in acidic water. They're an unusual case. In a more typical fish, generally you'll have spawning once a year. And so like salmon and trout, like they're a classic example, and striped bass and things like that, they're classic examples of things spawning once a year. Like salmon and trout and bass, striped bass will migrate upriver, depending on the species. Like some of them will do it in spring, and they'll all migrate up spring, release their eggs, and males release their sperm. They all mate, and then they go back down the river and they do it again next year. Or some salmon species, they only do it once and they die. Then you have some other species that spawn in the fall. They'll go up the river in the fall, spawn, and then come back down. So like rainbow trout are a spring species, and brown trout are a fall species. And so different fish, usually for most big predatory fish, it's once a year. But a lot of the smaller fish that have a lot more more quick reproductive cycles, like guppies, can reproduce like every month or something like that. Mosquito fish, things like that. It's just because it only takes like a few weeks to get to this big, compared to like this big.
All right, so I have so if there was any way, I try to think of some of these questions, and they're kind of just because I'm hoping some people I can't afford different kind of snakeheads. I'm trying to see there. You got a question up there that somebody has from Chad.
Yeah. So I guess the answer to that is not in the literature. I mean, I don't think we've seen any snakeheads found in blue cat stomachs yet. And I think the reason for that would be that they just inhabit very different habitats. I know, the snakehead are up really, really tight on structure, up in the lily pads, up in the really, really shallow muddy areas. And I think the blue cats are kind of utilizing more of the river channel. And it's absolutely within the realm of possibility, and it could happen at some point. I mean, especially on the Nanticoke, I mean, it's not black water, so I think there is absolutely opportunity for those two to overlap in habitat, but it's not something we've seen so far. And if so, they're not going to make up a large portion of their diet, I would say.
To touch on this comment that's up here about snakeheads spawning 4 times in a season. Yeah, so it's like I said, snakeheads are extremely variable. And so I absolutely there's like you could see spawns 4 times a year, but that may not be the same individuals. It may just be like because snakeheads are so variable, they're just like some age like I'm just gonna wait till next month to spawn. And so you may have one spawning here, one spawning there, one spawning there. Really, just any time where the water's warm enough, then they'll spawn. You're not gonna see it in winter, but in that range. In that range of like late spring to early summer to early fall, you may see the snakehead spawn, and we're still trying to figure out if the snakeheads are spawning like particularly in like the more southern parts of the region. I guess like in like southern Virginia and warmer areas. And I guess the coastal areas here that are a little warmer. Are they spawning? Are there some of the same individuals spawning once earlier in the spring and once later in the fall? And that's something that there's not enough data in for that, and hopefully my lab will help figure that out over the next couple of years, along with the help of the Department of Natural Resources and the USGS.
So how long are you going to, Zach, are you going to be there all the time doing everything with Noah, or
I'm never going to let him
I mean,
graduate. I'm going to hold his degree over. He's going to be doing manual labor for me for the next 20 years, and then maybe I'll think about it.
yeah.
no, yeah. So I mean, I'll be here for at least another year, and I think, you know, depending on how things line up, it could be another 2 years or so. Although, you know, I'm from this area, and I would really like to continue working with fish in the Chesapeake Bay, and whether or not that's going to happen, I guess, is kind of only time will tell. But yeah, I mean, I love the Bay, and I love here. So if I can continue working, maybe not here at Salisbury, but potentially at a state or federal agency, I mean, that would be the dream. So,
Andrew, how are you? I was throwing a red crankbait, 1.5 Kevin KVD crankbait. That's my favorite. I can throw that in the middle of the biggest bunch of mess in the tree and still get through and not get hung up too much. But because of Ben Woolery, last year I was throwing that red and in the same area, and he said he's going to the old reliable. And I threw on a Fire Tiger, and that kind of got me. And let me tell you what, I went to the dark side because I threw a freaking Cinco, and that is a no-no in my boat. You know, so I don't throw Cincos much.
Did you wacky that Cinco?
Yeah, it was it was a wacky rig Cinco, and I did. I caught almost 14 pounds of largemouth, and I didn't catch one. I think I lost one snakehead, but that whole day I didn't have no issues with a snakehead whatsoever. That was right on the Chickamacomico, so I was right down in Blackwater. But my other buddy, he caught like he had like five or six of them. He caught like five, lost three. His jigs. He was pretty upset about that. But hey,
we got a question from Bart here. Hey Bart, yeah. So snakeheads, like you may see them loaded up in eggs in late fall, or just I guess that's November to middle of the fall. But it depends on how developed those eggs are. It could be that could be their second spawn of a year, where it's like very late spawn. If it was like, especially like a warm summer, warm fall, it could be a second preparing for a second spawn. Or sometimes like some of the things we saw with blue catfish, like this winter and last fall, was they had developed eggs, but they shouldn't be having the eggs. Shouldn't be reproducing until the summer. So something we're kind of trying to figure out right now is like what is the developmental process of their eggs and when do they spawn? Because we're seeing something similar with the catfish, and so I guess this will work for both the snakeheads and the catfish. Kind of a hypothesis that I'm working around is maybe these fish are starting to develop their eggs in like the fall. While the water's warmer, there may be more prey around, their metabolism's higher, and they're getting as much food as they can while it's around to help develop their eggs. And then during winter, when there's not as much food around, they kind of pause the development of their eggs and then restart it when the food starts becoming more available and the water starts warming up, their metabolism starts warming up, and they start being more active. And so that's still something we don't quite know, and I'm hoping my lab will figure that out soon.
That's fascinating research, dude. Seriously. Like, I'm really interested to see how that comes out.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Oh, here's a great question on what peer review is.
That's a good question. Yeah.
Yeah. So this peer review is a lot of stuff like scientists talk to it, and you may hear this, but you don't really get a great explanation. So I'll try to hopefully give a great explanation. Peer review means that peers in, if it's something been peer reviewed, that's been reviewed by peers in the field. And by that means scientists who are not just scientists. I'm not going to, a molecular geneticist or a medical doctor is not going to review my research on fish. It's going to be somebody that does something on fish, and not just anything on fish. A journal where this research is published is going to try to find a scientist who is as close to that field as me as possible, so they can be the best judge of this research as possible. If you get somebody who doesn't understand their research, they're not really going to be able to be a good peer reviewer to tell you, is it sound science? And so the whole process of peer review is to have people who are experts and unrelated to the research look at the research and be able to say, yeah, that's sound science. That makes sense. What they did makes sense. And they drew reasonable conclusions about their results. So in this process where I literally had to deal with, I had a paper accepted this morning, so I'm very fresh in the peer review process. yeah, this peer review happens is generally it's not just okay. They read it, sounds good. It's usually a year-long process, or it depends on how much work it needs. It could be like a couple months. This one was a couple months because it was a pretty straightforward paper, I think. Which is actually, this paper is about factoring in the amphibious behaviors of invasive amphibious fishes to help with their management, like snakeheads, walking catfish, and plecos, things you may have heard of, swamp eels. But in general, that peer review process can take some time, where rarely is a paper ever accepted on the first submission right off the bat. Like, it's perfect. I've never had that happen before, and I've had like a dozen papers published so far. What happens is you send it around and you can get anything from like either rejected, like it's not sound, it's not good quality. Then you can be accepted upon major revisions. So these reviewers have these major comments and concerns that you have to either change your paper up or address them and explain why you think your paper should, like, justify why your paper should stand as it is. And so generally you may go back and forth through a couple of rounds of that. And then you also may have minor revisions where overall it's good, but there's some small things that they have some concerns about that they want you to address before its publication. That's to ensure quality control of the research. So peer review just makes sure you're getting quality science that's been reviewed by other scientists in the same field, and make sure it's just all sound. Yeah. And so I guess another question here is from Dave on why there's no snakeheads in Johnson's Pond. And so I live on Johnson's Pond, and so there is actually snakeheads in there right now.
Oh shit! Oh
yeah. So last year was the
great,
year.
Awesome.
Yeah. It depends on who you ask. So last year was the first year that they were recorded by the Maryland Department of Natural Resources by anybody in the Johnson Pond. It could
Thanks,
be
Dave.
because the water could have been high and overflowing the dam one day, and then some snakeheads swam over while the water was overflowing. That's a possibility. A more likely possibility is some fisherman who lives near Johnson Pond is like, ooh, I want to catch these fish closer to home. Caught some in, let's say, Blackwater, drove them to here and put them in there. And that's actually those little ponds right next to Johnson Pond. I know a guy who caught snakeheads there last week. There are two of them he caught, and I was fishing on my kayak, and he's on his boat. He's like, I just moved here, looking to do some snakehead fishing. Can you give me any advice? And like also crappie fishing and all that stuff. I'm like, sure. And I give him my number. Like, if you ever see any snakeheads in here, let me know, because I'd love to be able to keep track of the population. He ended up having to go home to drop his kid off. Then he went to fish that little pond in that park, like just west, like a block west of Johnson Pond. And he caught a snakehead. Another guy caught a snakehead there. And so they're around, and they're just going to keep spreading, and people are probably going to accelerate it. And to some extent,
absolutely,
floods and things like that, and extreme conditions, snakeheads can move short distances over from one body of water to another. They're not going to move miles and miles, but if you have like this flooded river next to a pond 100 feet away, they can maybe make it there. It doesn't have to happen all the time, but just a rare couple snakeheads get in, then you have a new population there.
Oh, great. Dave, Crockett. Now everybody, wait till tomorrow when there's 500 people in there fishing for snakeheads. Dave.
There's only been one so far caught in there. So it may not be an established population. If anybody ever catches a snake in there, let me know. You can just slap it on my dock. I got a bright yellow kayak on there. You slap it on there, and I will gladly dissect it and get all the information from it.
I'd been fishing Johnson's Pond, man. When I lived in Baltimore, we used to drive there. Just if my buddy Nort's still on here, my buddy Nort, we used to go down there and fish there all the time. And there was actually it's been a while. We had that one hurricane come through, and supposedly they opened the gates up to kind of let some of the water out when you know it's going to be a lot of water. But supposedly somebody left the gate open, and pretty much I heard it kind of drained all the way down to a little creek. You know, that's how much water released. But I hear that Johnson Pond is actually getting back to some half decent stuff.
Yeah. So when I moved here, I was like looking for houses, and I have some friends in the DNR that I was talking to, and I was like, so I see this house for sale on Johnson on the dock. I got to get the scoop on all the fishing in this lake before I move here because I want to make sure I'm moving to a good lake. It's like, give me the rundown of every single species and the size range. And they're like, they got, I guess I'm about to blow up my fishing spot, so I'll stop.
Don't do it.
Just
the
don't
first
know
time I
that-
met Noah, we met
this-
we met in Fish Johnson's Pond. I remember that.
I'll just say Johnson Pond is a very healthy ecosystem and it's recovered well. You still may not have those extremely large individuals that are really long-lived because of that big drainage, but I'm seeing a lot of osprey and herons and all the fish, regardless of the size. I don't really see many sickly-looking fish. And
No,
so
it's been-
a pretty healthy ecosystem.
Yeah, that's that pond is beautiful. It's a beautiful pond too. It's really, for me to drive 2 hours or so to go down there to fish it. It's been because we used to camp down at Rowing Point. And Rowing Point's down there right on the Nanticoke River. I mean, it's right on Nanticoke. We used to go up there and fish bass from there when we camped. But that's it. It's over with. Before I'm telling you, they are all coming. The army of snakehead guys are coming to Johnson's Pond. All right, I'm really giving some of these guys a hard time. All right, here's some other questions. I'm sorry if I'm missing stuff. You guys keep talking. So, what else? Let me see. I'm coming up with all the questions. Come on, people. You guys.
I got a question. It's in the chat, but I can read it real quick.
Go ahead.
All right. So, invasion dynamics, right? Could you explain how invasion dynamics kind of helps us to understand the fluctuations in populations of an invasive species in an environment? Because like you said, right now, you just have only sampled the one snakehead in Johnson's Pond, which is why it kind of triggered in my head. Okay, well, what kind of population increase can we expect to see over time?
Mm-hmm.
So if you could kind of explain invasion dynamics, I think it'd be an interesting point to explain that kind of population fluctuation.
Yeah, absolutely. And so invasion dynamics, basically, let's start off with you have one fish gets entered into Johnson Pond. We're going to give Johnson Pond as an example because it is an example. So you have one snake get introduced in there. It could be that was just one snake get introduced. There could be no other snakeheads in there. One fish got in, whether accidentally or intentionally. But with only one fish, there is nothing for it to reproduce with, so it may just get bigger and bigger and have one world record snakehead there, but it won't reproduce in the population and will die when that fish dies. That happens with a lot of introductions where one fish gets introduced. Like you may have an aquarium fish gets introduced and here or there, and that happens sometimes where the fishes then the population dies out. But if you have multiple individuals are introduced at the same time, then it all depends on the number of individuals. So you kind of have to reach a critical threshold for individuals. So you could have, if a couple individuals, snakeheads, get into Johnson Pond, but never happen to interact with each other, then the population, then they never reproduce and the population will just drop down. And that Johnson Pond is small, is relatively small enough where that they would probably encounter at some point. And quick thing on here, the usual time frame for snakeheads to start spawning is like late spring to early fall. It can be a wide range. But if those initial fish do start interacting and then do start mating, then they can then start increasing their numbers and start establishing a population. But that also depends on, are there predators that can eat them? Are there predators that can keep their population down, or maybe one eats that first individual or the first few individual, or you have one pair that spawns and then something eats the two parents and then those fry all get eaten in a frenzy by cormorants or whatever. And so it all depends on, once these populations get up to a critical threshold, then the population is what's known as established. It is there to stay. And in certain isolated ponds, you could just basically use what rotenone, which is a fish poison that just kills all the fish in that pond, and then like, okay, let's kill the snakeheads and restock it. But in larger bodies of water, especially like tidal bodies like a river, it's harder to do that because the river is less isolated. All these little creeks and things like that, these fish can stay in pockets. It's hard to get them. And so when they're established in those things, then they are established. But things can change from that. So let's take the blue catfish, for example, in the eastern shore of the Nanticoke River. They likely got here around 20 years ago or so. They were first introduced on the other side of the bay by fisheries managers back in the 70s when people didn't really know as much about ecosystems of invasive species. And so they're introduced, and then they've been making their way like up and around the bay, and they got here maybe around 20, 25 years ago. Nobody knows for sure. We're trying to figure that out. But we're looking at some data from 10 years ago, and we're seeing that the biggest catfish we're seeing there were like 2 feet long or something like that. And the oldest ones were maybe 10 years old. But now we're seeing oldest ones that are almost 20 years old, and they're over almost 4 feet long. And that's because some of these fish are long-lived. And so just because they've established doesn't mean their population's done changing. These fish haven't reached their maximum growth rate yet, and they also haven't reached their maximum population size yet. And so generally in invasive biology, you have like it's kind of that fluctuating period where you're not sure, and then the population establishes, and then it keeps taking off and taking off. And the rate at which it takes off, whether it's really quickly or really slowly, happens to do with things like, are there native predators that can eat them, or how successful are they in their environment? And snakeheads and blue catfish are pretty successful in this environment, so they're thriving pretty well. And you don't really have as many prey items like that are used to having to hide from 100-pound catfish or a giant toothy predator that can grow to 3 feet long and pounce on them on the shoreline. And so these things are not used to these predators, and so that makes them particularly vulnerable to these invasive species. And because these invasive species can take advantage of that, they can generally grow more quickly and eat a lot of the native species without the native species knowing what to do. And so a lot of times with invasion biology, you may see it grows and grows and grows. Population keeps expanding as the native biodiversity starts going down. And then it could get to the point where they may starve themselves, where they may grow so quickly and devour so many things that there's just not enough food to support them. And then their population comes back down as the native foods start coming back in. And then as the native foods start coming back in, you have the catfish population comes back up, and then it goes back down. Eventually it gets a period where it kind of oscillates and equalizes.
Yo-yo.
That doesn't mean it's a good thing when that equalizes. That just means you've established a new ecosystem. So think about like carp. They did the same thing a while back, like a couple hundred years ago when they were established here. Their populations fluctuated up and like they reached they grew really quickly, then they fluctuated to a certain level. This is really common in this invasive species. And at that level, they establish a new ecosystem, and it may have less species, like less native species. It may cause some species to go extinct, and it may not be a very healthy ecosystem, but it'll be a new ecosystem. And so at that point, those species then maybe aren't considered invasive. They're considered naturalized, because any damage or any swings that they would have done to the ecosystem, it's already been happened, and it's going to stay. But that's only in that region. If you then move them to another region where they're not found, like a different river or a different lake, that happens all over again.
That's a great explanation, Noah. Thanks, man.
Yeah, that's pretty thank God I didn't have to say that. So, but there's I hate to bring in another fish in here to even, I know we've been talking about them, but I don't understand why we have another predator in most of these places, especially like Johnson's Pond and stuff, that's very toothy, that will eat anything that I would think in front of them. I've caught them, and that's pickerel. That's the chain pickerel. Chain pickerel are probably just as aggressive as a largemouth bass and a snakehead.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
So pickerel are native species, and they're healthy in the part of the neural system. They're fun to catch. I caught some in my yard yesterday. I came in second in the River Runners Pickerel tournament by 1 inch. I'm still bummed about that. Some guy came in the last day, cut me off, and took a 27-inch pickerel right where I was about to cast. I was like, darn. But
did you ever have any sleepovers?
What was that?
You ever have any sleepovers?
Not when the weather gets warm, I'll do some fishing cookouts and stuff like that. Have a barbecue in the back, grill some fish up, and all that.
Let's do it. I'm here for the comedy. Them guys are here for the information. Okay.
But snakeheads are likely one that will compete with the pickerel pretty well, because they're similar toothy predators. In that situation, it depends on who is the better predator, who is the fitter predator. And so that could be it may be, let's say, the snakeheads can eat more effectively, but the pickerel can reproduce more quickly, and that can balance things out. And so, if there was 100% overlap with these fish, which we don't quite know yet, just because it's still the snakeheads have been here 20 years less, we're still trying to figure things out. In the grand scheme of ecosystems, that's not very long. And so, it could be that the snakeheads could completely wipe out the pickerel. It's possible. Or it could be the pickerel and snakeheads, they find a region where they don't overlap, and then they specialize in those regions. And pickerel do really well in very clear water, and
Cold water.
they like a lot of submerged vegetation, and they like a lot of submerged structure that they like to just wait for a fish and then rock it out ambush. And snakeheads are similar to extent, but snakeheads can thrive in very murky water, and they like to be even shallower and even hotter water than the pickerel, like particularly in really shallow water, like lily pads. And that is how they may be able to separate. And I don't think the pickerel are going to disappear. I think we may see less pickerel because of some competition, but you're going to still see some pickerel most likely. They're just going to specialize in a little bit different way than the snakeheads.
Here's another question. Which is the greater threat to the health of the local fishery, snakeheads or poor drainage? And yeah, man. So I just I posted the other day. Let me do the guy here. So I posted. I actually tagged Steven about Back River, how the crap plant, because that's where I kind of grew up down there. On a nice summer night when the wind blew right, I'm telling you, just wonderful. Wonderful memories, man. And but they had just like a complete. There were some people there that were actually taking videos and stuff of literally sewage leaks coming out from underneath. They were just releasing sewage right in the Back River, and that's going to go into Middle River, around Hart Miller Island, all in that area. It's going to work. I mean, that's the stuff that all the fish competition is one thing, but that stuff there is to me more important than anything to me, the pollution part.
Yeah. And so I'd say the answer to that question, whether snakeheads are worse, the pollution's worse, it depends. It depends how bad that pollution is, how many snakeheads are in there, and what kind of pollution is. It really depends. Appreciate it, Adam. And so areas, let's say where you have, let's say, a sewage leak, that is probably going to be a bigger threat to local biodiversity than snakeheads. Areas where pristine water, you got nice water treatment plant, everything's going smooth, snakeheads. But again, we still don't know the full extent of snakeheads and how much their population are reducing things. Some work on the Western Shore found that in healthy ecosystems and clean water, the snakeheads reduce the largemouth bass populations by about 4%. So it's a little decrease, but they're going to coexist, and it'll be what it is. But in areas with poor water quality where snakeheads really excel, because they have such extreme tolerance of conditions, like they could be in really acidic water with no oxygen, things like that. That's where snakeheads are thriving. They're going to have a bigger impact there, like things like black water. And so what's going to happen is a combination of those two. So you have polluted water, that's bad quality water. Snakeheads are going to thrive really well in that, and they're going to take advantage of that. However, to give you an idea of the kind of the numbers we're seeing, like when I did some snakehead research on the Western Shore, we would go out electro fishing. We would see and trying to collect snakeheads from our research. We saw, I think, on the Nanticoke Creek in the Western Shore, probably got we saw 3 big largemouth bass in a couple hours electro fishing. We saw a dozen snakeheads that we got, and then we saw hundreds of catfish. And hundreds of catfish, some really tiny, some huge, but catfish were the much larger number. And so what I think what we're seeing is the catfish are probably having a much larger effect on the ecosystem. Not to say snakeheads aren't having an effect, but in terms of sheer volume of effect, catfish are very larger. But the current research we're doing and that Zach is leading is we're trying to separate by looking at in the Nanticoke River system what the catfish are eating and what the snakeheads are eating at the same time in the same river. We can figure out what effects are they having. Are they eating the exact same things, just the catfish are eating more? Are the catfish having a broader diet, but snakeheads are maybe lower in number, but are only eating white perch, and therefore they may have a greater impact on white perch? That's some of the stuff we're looking at now to try to figure out. Oh, Zach, I'll let you answer this question.
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, it really ranges. Like earlier, earlier today, I pulled a giant wood chip out of the stomach of a catfish. Weird stuff like that definitely comes about from time to time. But I would say the most interesting find so far has been an adult wood duck that we found out of the stomach of a 47-pounder back in October.
Mm-hmm.
So the mind kind of boggles at, how the catfish went about eating the wood duck, right? Did it scoop it off the surface of the water? Was it diving? Was it shot by a hunter and it got breasted out and turned back in the water? There's really no way to tell, right? We just know that it did, in fact, eat a wood duck. So that was a big surprise. Who would have thought? I'm sitting there picking through stomach contents and I see a bunch of feathers start to come out of that stomach.
This is one of the first catfish too.
No,
Yeah, that was our first day of electro fishing. Probably one of the first 30 fish we collected. So it's we haven't seen it since then. But yeah, I mean it's interesting. I think they can eat. It's kind of like we said in the beginning, right? They can eat whatever the heck they can get their mouth around, and I think that has really shown true in our work so far.
Yeah, my favorite things that we've found so far is we've seen some rocks, some wood, and some mud. And so I want to start getting this going, as I think these blue catfish are like the tiger sharks of the Eastern Shore. They'll eat anything they can get their mouths around. But whereas I think snakeheads are a little bit pickier, it's seeming like.
No,
I mean, I found, so just to continue on the idea of stomach contents, earlier today I looked at the stomach of a fish that was probably 28 inches in length or so, and it had half of a blue catfish that was probably, so like the entire tail segment from about the midpoint of the fish to the tail was remaining in the stomach. The rest of it had obviously digested. But looking at the size of that tail, it was probably from a fish that was, guess, about 18 or 19 inches in length. So, I mean, this 27-inch fish ate something that was well over half its size and it was still digesting it in its stomach. So, well, I mean, whatever they can get their mouths around.
I was actually watching David Confair that I had on the last stream. He actually gutted a catfish earlier today that I watched, and there was actually, he had 4. It looked like I think they were shiners. I mean, not shiners. No, shad.
We saw the same.
It was shad. It was like he had that catfish might have been 10 pounds, maybe. What do you think about 10 pounds, Steve? And had like 4.
Yeah, about 10. Right around the
10, 15, and it had 4 fish in its gut. I mean, nice. And I'm not talking little ones. I'm talking nice.
They were big fish.
They're a nice big fish. Hey, Steve, you don't have to put it in the comments, dude. You can just ask the questions, man.
I don't want to interrupt.
You're not interrupting, man. That's why, because I mean, you're probably sitting there. You probably done written down about 15 questions. So, man, please, seriously, man.
I always have questions when I'm with fisheries biologists. I love hearing.
Well, that's what I mean. I want you to ask, because that's okay. For everybody here. I mean, I know they're doing. I mean, you got your own information that you have, but you're into you love this stuff. So please, man, please don't make sure you say something, because.
Well, I guess the one thing I'll put out there then, it's not so much a question, but maybe you two can expand on it. Like, I didn't realize until probably in the last couple years, A, how predatory catfish can be, and B, that as a family, how successful they are worldwide. I mean, like, catfish are in virtually like every environment. You can almost find catfish. It's insane. But if y'all want to expand on either of those points, please go ahead.
Yeah. So catfish are definitely one of the most diverse groups of fish around the world. Over 2,000 catfish species at least. That's a very conservative estimate, I think. Over 2,000 species of catfish out of the 33,000 species of bony fish and whatnot. And I've done some research. There's a wide diversity, and I've done some research on catfish from Asia that are invasive in Florida, that they're called walking catfish. They can move around on land, and some research showing that they can use their whiskers to taste air in a way other catfish can't, and so they can follow basically they can essentially smell the air by waving their whiskers around and tasting it, because they have taste buds on their whiskers, and they can navigate land like that and find bodies of water and find prey like that. Then there's also some that are from like South America, all those sucker mouth catfish, like plecos you may see in a fish tank, like sucking on a fish tank. And those ones can also move around on land in weird ways and climb waterfalls with their really robust suction cup of a mouth. and so they're really
That's interesting.
group of fish. But particularly blue catfish, they are really predatory, and they can be. It all depends on like how hungry they are and prey availability. And if a duck happens to be sitting jumps off a log while they're sitting under it, easy meal for them to grab if they start dabbling.
Mm-hmm.
And then also some things like when I was fishing the Pocomoke River last summer, I thought I was fishing a dock in there, and I was fishing from a boat at a dock, and I thought I kept getting slammed by big stripers, getting broken off on swim baits. And then I realized I was getting, and when I finally brought something up, I was like, oh, I got a monster striper here. It was a 15-pound blue cat on a tiny little swim bait. And then another one, and then another one, and another one. In about 15 minutes, I got 10, 15-pound blue cats on swim baits. And so if they're in the right mood and they're feeding right, they can be very aggressive predators.
Mm-hmm.
But we've been on here live. So what I want everybody to do, we've been on here an hour. God, man, how time flies when you're getting all that information, ain't it?
Yeah.
All right, so I mean, look, guys. I mean, we'll stay on as long as you guys are comfortable, as long as we're talking. If you guys are okay. But what I want to do with everybody in here, I'd like to try to go ahead and give away. Again, I mean, it ain't nowhere near as much as we had the last time because we had a lot of great lure companies, local lure companies that actually high octane, Spectra baits. We had Taylor Lures, old school bait company. You had the Jawbreakers. He didn't give us anything, but he was good. We had what's the seasoning that you like?
I don't remember the name of it.
Oh my God, you got to know the seasoning. Okay, so what we're going to give away, real today, is going to give two things. That is JO number one. It's all-purpose seasoning, and we're going to give away some JO. That's for your snakeheads. You want to get them snakeheads and fry them right in that damn pan. I'm just messing with Steve. Oh wait a minute, hold up. Hold on, let me see something.
Oh, Sam Tudor. No, I can't believe Sam won it at the last minute. Oh, I'm never going to hear the end of this. I am never going to hear the end of this. Congrats, Sam. Congrats, man.
Mm-hmm.
All right, that was
You are not hearing the end of this.
No, he'll see that. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to share the screen. So everybody needs to do #fishing. Okay, if you wanna win this, #fishing, and let this old guy mess with that. Oh wait a minute, hold up. I got to do something. Let me share my screen. Share screen. Look, this time I actually know what I'm doing. Last time it was not good. Oh, is it sharing? There it is. All right. All right, we only got 6 entries. #fishing. That's what you need to put in there. And we'll wait a couple minutes and you guys can talk. So I think I talked and hit on Pickerel and stuff like that.
So one thing we haven't really hit on yet, Sam.
Go ahead, buddy.
I say Noah and Zach. What's your favorite kind of fishing, man? Because I think both of y'all are avid fishermen. We talked a lot about the information. What are your favorite kind of fishing to do?
Ooh, so I do a wide range of fishing, and I mean the widest range of fishing. From I've gone ice fishing, deep sea, offshore, marlin fishing. I've gone down scuba diving with little fishing rods to try to catch fish while I'm down there.
Ain't that cool?
Even micro fishing, where I try to get a tiny hook and try to get as small as fish as possible. And I do that because I'm trying to catch as many different species as possible. And I'm currently at 447 different species on hook and line. And I want to, and so all fishing, if anybody has like a cool new way to try to fish, I'm game for it. And I love trying new ways, but I think I just love
Noodling.
A nice, peaceful inshore fishing trip for like striped bass or red drum on the fly or light tackle, where you can just really enjoy the fish without having to worry about driving 3 hours offshore, freezing your butt off or anything like that.
Noodling. Come on, I want to see the video.
I've never gone noodling. Noodling is one thing I'm really
scared
to do. Yes, because a lot of times you can have snapping turtles in the same hole as a catfish.
Exactly. That's exactly why I won't do it.
Not noodling even if I miss a catfish, unless like it's crystal clear water and I got a snorkel mask and I can see that's a catfish. But I've seen those like noodling competitions like Oklahoma, and there's like, oh, there's the best noodler in Oklahoma. It's One Finger Jim. I'm like, no, I'm not
One Finger Jim. Now, that is funny as hell. All right, we only got 15. We got 27 people in here. All you got to do is you got to be in the United States. We can't be having you in, somewhere where we can't get you. So, hashtag fishing. We'll give it
Zach's connection briefly needs to get put back in.
What's that?
Gotcha.
Zach's backstage. He lost connection for a little bit. He needs to get put back in.
Oh, okay.
So one other thing then.
There he is.
I was really
There we
surprised
go.
to see
Sorry about
this.
that, everybody.
Sorry, buddy.
I was really surprised to see it, but over the past, I don't know, since bow fishing really picked up, I've started seeing bow fishers fill their decks with blue cats and sizable blue cats. And like, I never thought that the blue cats were coming that shallow, at least not to that degree. But I mean, if you're bow fishing them, you're talking maybe a couple feet of water at most.
Yeah, I can't.
It was really wild for me to see that. It was just surprising.
I was bringing this up to somebody else, and this is what I was thinking. Okay, so look, there's a lot of people that don't obviously like snakeheads, and they're an invasive species, blue cats, and them. So this is just me saying, is like, why can't? So you got these bow fishermen where they go out there and they literally fill up the deck. Now I don't know if you got 2 or 3 people on there, if they're taking all of that to eat. Now what they're doing with them, I don't know. I don't know if they're selling them. But I don't know why there couldn't be like a program, just like we do when we deer harvest. There's guys out there that deer hunt. Like me, I'll go and just get what I want for my freezer, and I'm done for the year. I don't need to go out and keep on. But there's guys that just love it. I know my friends, they love just going out and being out in the woods, and they'll harvest 3, 4 does, 2 or 3, and they donate it. And in Maryland, we have a donation program to where you can donate your deers to certain butchers, and they will actually, they give it to they feed the hungry and stuff like that. So I mean, if they're going to do it if they could do it with deer, why couldn't they do it with something like this? At least if there was a way to, at least, not. I don't know. I'm kind of up in the air. I got friends that will just kill them and just get rid of the snakeheads and just throw them out somewhere. But I got guys, that, I'm kind of guy that would think that there could be better use than just killing them to kill them. But I don't know. I'll get flack from both sides. Who knows? But all right. So we got 16 people.
A lot of that.
Go ahead, Zach. I'm sorry.
I think some of those difficulties in kind of getting out that meat that people catch from some of these invasives. Some of the hurdles that we've had to jump have been with like USDA regulations and things like that, in terms of like, can we give this, to people to eat without certain certifications and things like that. So that's definitely been a big hurdle that hopefully we can work around some of these strict regulations.
All right, so
encourage harvest, because that's a great way to trim the population down.
Zach, I do not want to interrupt anything you're saying, but let me get through this real quick so I can put you on a screen. All right, I'm going to draw this. This is going to randomly pick you, and whoever wins, we'll send it to you. You can get me on Instagram, Insta Messenger, Outdoors of Maryland, any which way. And don't forget to hit that like button, because I'm a sellout for damn YouTube.
No end.
Yeah.
No.
All right.
Get at
I
it.
swear it's not rigged.
When they see it, they see the randomness. Noah. All right. So Noah's the winner.
So I'm about to express a very unpopular opinion here that I probably shouldn't.
Go ahead,
I'm
buddy.
excited to try this seasoning because I'm not the biggest Old Bay fan, and I'm sorry if I have to leave the state of Maryland. It's all right, but I'm excited to try this new seasoning.
I actually this morning, I know it was kind of late. I didn't get a response, but I actually know Ginger, the owner of J.O. Seasoning. I texted her this morning to see if she wanted to maybe add maybe another seasoning or two. She's been really kind of nice to me. But J.O. Seasoning's been in Maryland for 75 years. So they're not a fly-by-night. They've been here 75 years. And pretty much anybody, if you go to Chesapeake Outdoors, if you go to all these places that sell you the little package of seasoning, that's J.O. Seasoning. J.O. Seasoning, especially for steaming crabs. You know, a lot of people go and get your crabs for seasoning. A lot of these crab houses that are steaming your crabs, that's JO seasoning. Now, we're not giving you JO number 2 because that's really kind of, you know, that's for steaming crabs. You don't want that. This JO is a nice all-purpose, and you want to fry some fish. It's a little kick to it. It's not a lot, but it's got a little tiny kick to it. And man, this is freaking awesome. I love this stuff.
Awesome.
And we'll
excited to give it a shot. Yeah, and actually, something along that is I just put in for a grant this week to hopefully get funds to host a snakehead and blue catfish fishing tournament on the Nanticoke River in July to get some specimens, like where big weigh, and then we keep we take the stomachs if you want to keep the meat, and then part of that would be a recipe contest to encourage people to eat these species. And I'll have to give it a try. And if if I'm loving JO, I'll have to whip up my own recipe with that and try to win that tournament too. I won't be the judge for that, so it won't be rigged. But I think somebody asked earlier what would be. I think you can catch blue cat any time of the year, but I think that if you want to catch them, I think in the wintertime they school up a lot more, right? They would school up. You're legally, you can catch them any time of year, and you're also like physically actually able, they are something that bites year round. In the summer and when it's really hot, you may get them more likely like at night fishing or things like that. But in the winter, they tend to school up, and on really cold days, we see them. They'll burrow into the mud a little bit, and like we'll shock them up. Then like they may not bite as much, but we'll shock them up then, and they'll come up coated in mud. And so like it shows that they're actually burrowing. And I want to do some research to figure out actually how do they burrow into the mud. But they will generally they'll school up and they'll feed less. But if you get a couple warm days in a row, nice sunny warm days, that'll promote them to feed a little bit more, because they'll keep feeding, but it's just a slower bite. You just got to let them chew on that bait a little longer in winter before you set the hook.
Hey, Zach, when you were gone, dude, you never got a chance to tell us what your favorite kind of fishing is, man. So I wanted to circle back around.
I'm glad we circled back to that so I can talk about it. Yeah, so like I said, I grew up down in Virginia, and I absolutely love fishing for red drum and speckled trout. I know it's kind of sacrilege over here in the freshwater community, but I really love fishing for red drum and like surf fishing for them off the beaches. It's been something I've done since I was about 5 years old. So that's kind of like, the absolute greatest for me. I also fish for speckled trout a lot in the winter. So down, I'm not going to burn my spots, but down in some of the certain parts of the Chesapeake Bay down in Virginia, we target them a lot in the winter, and particularly night fishing for them has been a lot of fun. So yeah, those are my two number ones, although I love all types of fishing.
Good deal.
So it's hard to choose, really.
So the question here, and how is the gar population holding up? And so that's a little complicated. The gar, they're hanging in there, but they're a little bit declined, particularly because of the kind of surge of bow fishers. And I'm going to try to be careful about wording. I'm not going to really say if I'm for or against bow fishing that much. I see there's positives and downsides of it. It could be a good way to control native species, invasive species, but that's only if people are only shooting native species. And a lot of times gar maybe get confused with snakeheads from the back because they have similar coloration, similar shape. And so some people shoot the gar and they don't eat the gar. You can eat the gar. It tastes pretty good if you just have to work through that tough scales to get them, but they taste pretty good. But a lot of times people may just bow fish for gar. And if they don't, while fishing for snakeheads, and they may just kill the gar thinking they're invasive or they're a trash fish, but they're not a trash fish. They're really important native fish, and they're originally they help eat sick fish in populations to keep the whole population more healthy. And so when people are bow fishing there, people really got to make sure, like, don't just kill the gar for the sake of killing something. If you're going to shoot a gar, make sure to eat it. And if not, let the gar be, because they're with increasing bow fishing pressure, they are more and more at risk.
That may be the best question all night right there.
So I will touch on this a little bit because I have done some research on sewer fish. This is, and I literally ended, like, did a big essay contest on this, and I ended it with something like, because walking catfish are in the sewers of Florida, and I'm like, these fish need to get out of the sewers because that's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle territory. But walking catfish are those crazy fish that I mentioned before that are invasive species in Florida. They're from Southeast Asia. Still trying to figure out what exact species they are, because you think it was one, but it's a different. But they're all either, whether it's from Vietnam or it's from Indonesia, it's one of those. And Florida is very flat, and so there's always water in the storm drain system. Standing water, it needs more water to flush them out. And so when it rains, that connects the storm drain, the surface waters, like the flooded surface ground, with the storm drain, and those catfish will swim up through the drain, or at least like that's some of the results of my research suggests that they swim up through the drain, feed on things that are partially submerged, like if you ever seen a bunch of worms on the ground after it rains, then they'll, once the water goes back down, they'll go back down in the sewers. So I think the catfish would have it because they're already well versed in the sewers. They know what they're doing in those sewers, and the snakeheads may have to figure things out first.
I think we might have hit on this one, but I'm going to put that up there from Nathan.
I'll hit one point on that, Sam, and then if I'm off base, Noah or Zach, just correct me. So based on what I've read, we have something called the Gonad Somatic Index, and that's a measure of the gonads, or the sexual organs of a snakehead, or any fish for that matter, relative to the overall mass of the fish. And of course, as they're getting closer and closer to the spawning period, that index is going to increase because the gonads, the eggs, everything is growing and becoming more massive. And based on the last study I read, but like Noah said, the literature is still young. 2 decades is not a long time in studying any species or any ecosystem at all. But based on what I'd read, it looks like there were 2 peaks pretty much in kind of the May, June, and like August, September timeframe. Now, that being said, I'm a snakehead fisherman. I've seen fry balls throughout the year. But when have I seen the most fry balls? In that early period, kind of the May, June timeframe, and then again in the fall with another peak. So with that being said, if I'm out of line, gentlemen, by all means, set me straight.
No, I think
way late for the party.
There are some fish that are just reproducing once a year, and those may be somewhere in the middle of that. But we're starting to see evidence that there may be those 2 peaks, like they are reproducing twice a year. And that's why everybody's going to be really cautious about this in the fishery science community, because we want to make sure that the data is in there to support that, and it's peer reviewed, which takes a few years to do that, to make sure that it's sound science. But preliminarily, we are seeing that they may be reproducing twice a year, and so those same some individuals are maybe reproducing once in the middle of the summer, and then some maybe reproducing once at the beginning and once at the end. But going on to that Gonad Somatic Index, that's a great point, where it's also not just seasonal, but it's changes throughout the lifetime of fish. So generally, most fish will try to grow as quickly as they can to get a certain size before they start reproducing, so that they can then grow big enough to where they escape predation. So you get too big, things have more trouble eating you. And then at that size, you start growing more slowly, but you start devoting more resources to your gonads, so you can produce more and more eggs or sperm. But really, the eggs is what's the limiting factor here. And so for pretty much all species, the larger, older individuals can produce more and more eggs. And so in the case of catfish, if you want to help control the catfish population by reducing one individual, you want to take the biggest female you can get rather than the smallest female, because that one can produce a disproportionately large number of eggs for its body size. But on the other side, if you want to help protect a population size, you want to keep the smaller ones. So that's big with the striped bass, especially the striped bass populations in decline in the Chesapeake Bay. And those big fat cows that can have so many eggs can have, relative to smaller individuals, even if, let's say you take 5-pound striped bass and you compare it to a 25-pound striped bass, they don't produce the same number of eggs. That 25-pounder can produce more eggs than those 5 combined, because they're putting a disproportionate amount of resources to those eggs. And so if you want to keep fish, go ahead, keep fish. But let's say if you get a really big striped bass and a really small striped bass, or like just a barely keeper size or a jumbo world record striper, maybe let that giant one go so it can reproduce and produce a lot more fish, because that fish is going to have a greater reproductive output, dramatically more so than those smaller ones. And that's why also like you seeing some slot sizes is becoming more prevalent in fisheries, because you can get like red drum allows you to make sure you get a big enough fish that may have had a chance to reproduce, and also big enough where you can get a decent sized meal. But once it gets too large, it's like, okay, those are off limits now, because those ones are producing so many more eggs and they're so valuable to the ecosystem.
Well, I could tell you that I kind of don't want to stop, but we've been on here an hour and a half and we're going to keep going. But I wouldn't mind if you three wouldn't even mind coming back, and maybe we'll talk stripers in the bay. We'll talk stripers.
That would be awesome. And Noah, I appreciate you going into that, dude, because I was going to ask you about that when you started talking about that, just the rationale behind what kind of fish we harvest, because we didn't really touch on the fisheries podcast that in that much in depth. But one big thing that at AFS is science communication. And that's something that's kind of near and dear to my heart as someone who loves fishing and someone who also loves fishery science, is that if we can find ways to connect fishery scientists with fishermen, I'm kind of an idealist and I get that, but if we could ever do that in a constructive, like sustained way, I feel like we can make some really good headway with fisheries management. Mm-hmm. So like conversations like this, Sam, I really appreciate you, giving your platform and bringing all of us in here to talk about it, because it's near and dear to my heart. And, if we get a chance to do it again, I'll be here. Definitely.
Well, I'm thinking,
I absolutely agree.
Yeah, because we did the snakehead thing where, look, you got, I don't know if there's too many people in the middle like I am. They're here, you're not going to do them. They're fun to catch, but I'm going to eat them all. I'm going to take them with me, and there's some guys, you release them. It is what it is. If blue cats are the same way, I'm not going to take, I don't know if I'm going to take a 60-pound catfish and bring it home. Now, if I'm with David can ferret, that could be a whole different thing, because he's going to take it. He's a commercial guy.
Yeah, we fish with him.
And so I definitely want to go out with Zach or you guys. If you're going to go out, and we can set up a time. Hold on. Let me go back here and bring my pretty face up here.
Sounds good.
Look at that. There I am. But go out and hang out, go on a boat. I can film it. I can document it. I tell you what, if there's I don't know how much room you have, but I swear I know that this guy right here, this guy right there, he would love to go too. So if you have room for both of us, not only more of the information. Look, we don't want stuff like this.
Oh, Sam Tudor. No, I can't believe Sam won it at the last minute. I'm never going to
get you some new video.
I'm sorry. Yeah. I'm just kidding.
We're happy to take you out. So we're limited in like rules of like liability. We can't take people out on the university boats, but we could, if you guys want to have a boat or we can meet up with kayaks and go fishing for these fish, because we're electro fishing for some, but we're also hook and line sampling for others. And this summer will be a lot of hook and line sampling for snakeheads on the Nanticoke, and I'm sure we'll get some catfish in the process of doing that, and all that will bring it back for our research.
Hey, look, I had 5 guys on my boat not too long ago. Remember last year? But I was casting around on my boat. So trust me, I figured that if I could put 5 of them, and them guys, everybody's you're going, dodging and weaving, the lures being flown around your head. But this has actually been pretty interesting. I'm just one of the guys like to fish, but as I won't, God, I can listen to people saying, "Oh, you're just sucking up to Steven." I can. Thanks, guys, for the content.
Keep going, Sam. Don't stop.
These guys information. I'm not going. Yeah. I'm listening. Hold up. Is there anything that you can do to via social media to influence, increase finding for fisheries research? Adam is another guy that I bet he must be a researcher.
He's another guy he loves to read the science. He does.
Okay. So some things to influence increased funding for fisheries research is, first off, just rebuild that trust between science. So like, over the last years, there's been a distrust between the public and science. And that's why me and Zach and a lot of other science communicators, we're trying to help bridge that gap so we can give accurate information to the people, but we're also got to make sure that the people trust us that the information we are giving is accurate. And so if we build that trust and like promote scientists more, like on social media, you could share science. Feel free to follow me on social media. I'm at Noah with Fish on all social media forums. If you start getting people more involved and spreading into this information, then you're going to elevate the perception of this research to the public. Because I was at the dock the other day when we just went electro fishing, and we shocked the last Monday we shocked the Nanticoke River to see what was in it, and a guy asked, "How's the striper looking right now?" And I'm like, "Bad. We only saw a few stripers. It's a little early, but we should still see some big ones." And we saw a couple, like a handful, and the biggest one was about this big. And the population's been down for a while. But he's like, Psh, that's just what the government wants you to think. That's what the DNR wants you to think. But when you think about it, so in a case like that, what does me as a fishery scientist get for saying the population is low, and so we should keep less? My job, I do not get paid more. I do not get paid less. What I do get paid is to provide accurate scientific information on what's going on. And so I had no reason to lie to this person. Like, we weren't seeing much. And you may have a lucky fishing day or here or there, but let's say you're catching 5 fish this day, but 10 years ago you're catching 10 fish. Sure, you're still having a decent fishing day with 5 fish, but it could be better. And so some of that long-term trends are hard to see, and so people don't necessarily believe these scientists up front. And so really the key is build trust in scientists. But also, if you want to increase funding for fisheries research, I'll take some money if you're just going to give out money. I'll totally take some money, and I'll use that towards fisheries research.
Well, that's cool. You know, this has actually been fun. If you want, I'll contact you guys, and if you want, we'll do it up on another Tuesday night. We'll talk about striped bass, and I'd ask Noah. I said, hey, you can pick whatever you want to talk about tonight. You know, when it comes to this, and definitely they're doing their study with Zach with the snakeheads and blue cats, and it's exactly what all the big hoopla is about in Maryland, and who's destroying what. I would think, like I think Steve said, if you're in Blackwater, you have we were barely, it's a shallow area, but when you're in like Potomac or you're in Nanticoke where you got 30 foot of water, and you've got more of a area, I think that it could be different. So I'm going to ask you guys to come back, and maybe we'll do a striper thing. And if they don't mind, which it looks like they're ready, and
I can talk about fish anytime, any day.
I know, dude. I'm right there with you.
Yeah, same
that's
here.
fine.
I don't do specific research on striper, but I'm very well read up on this, and we keep an eye out while we're looking for catfish. We're making sure, seeing what the ratios of fish we're seeing, and so I can speak a little about a striper. And I have been working on. There's an effort. So quick thing is, a lot of you may know about omega protein in Virginia catching all the menhaden, and so as they're coming to the bay, so there's not as much prey in the bay, and that is helping contribute to the decline of the stripers. They have less food here, along with some overfishing that's bringing them down. Some just by chance some bad reproductive years, which could be because of the less prey, and then on top of that, the extra overfishing. That's just a little taste of what's going on with the striped bass right now, and it's a big issue. But if you want to help with that, you can write to the Maryland Department of Natural Resources. You can write to the Atlantic States Marine Fisheries Commission, and I could talk about that more next week or whenever. And you can say you're in support for reducing the catches of menhaden, because by reducing the catches of menhaden by Virginia, more baits come in the bay, and not just more striped bass, more trout, more red drum, more black drum, whatever you want. You'll see more of that because there's just more prey around.
I'm telling you what, I was a bass fisherman. I watched Bill Dance, Hank Parker, and Jimmy Houston when I grew up on Saturday mornings. They were the guys I watched. And when you watch a buzzbait come across the water and a bass completely annihilated, that's how I got hooked. But learning later that there's so many species to have fun with. There's so much fishing, and man, take the kids. Just take the kids. I mean, they don't need to be in their phones. It's just, but this part of it is what a lot of people don't hear. And this is where I think that maybe we could do this, and I think it'd be pretty fun. So what I'll do, since we've been on here an hour and a half, we're going to take the people that are here watching, and hopefully we'll get them energized to come back. Maybe we'll do it next month. But I don't want to. We got to do it on night because now it's starting to get to the point where now we're all going to be out there fishing, staying out, and staying later. You know what I mean? So hey, we can go live on a boat. We can go live on a boat. We can go sit on a boat and go live, right?
Yep.
With some lines out, of course.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Thank you. I want to thank Noah. I want to thank Steve, and I want to thank Zach for even taking the time and come on. And this has actually been pretty awesome and interesting. I think very informational.
Thanks
for having us.
Thanks for having us.
Great.
One thing I want to
happy to do it anytime.
Yeah, and one thing I want to promote quickly is follow me on social media at Noah with Fish. And if you have more questions about these fish, other fish, anything about science in general, happy to do my best to answer the questions because I want to help be that science communication to help bridge that gap.
Well, do me a favor. If you could do me a favor and please send me the link. What I'll do is I will put the link to anything you guys want. Just, instant message to me. And when I post this will be up, but I'll put description into it. I'll put all that in the description. So anybody that wants to check that out, especially your podcast, Zach, I know you're going to podcast, so please make sure you send that to me so I can put the link out there because you're on a podcast talking about fish and stuff. That would be awesome.
For sure. Yeah, the Fisheries podcast. I'll go ahead and send that to you. And hey, Steve, maybe we'll get on and we'll fish at some point.
Dude, I'm up for it anytime, man.
Hey, hey, Steve, I'll see you next time.
Oh, Sam Tudor. No, I can't believe Sam won it at the last minute.
I'm just kidding, man. All right. Thanks, guys. I really appreciate it, man. Everybody, thank you for stopping by. I really, I really appreciate it. This has been pretty fun. All right. All right. Thanks, guys. I'll go ahead and let you all go.
All right. Have a good night. Thanks again.
Have a good one.
Yeah, man. And